お前、ブレイドだな。ドライバーはどうした？そこら辺で飲んだくれてるってんでもなさそうだが。俺の名はメツ。お前と同じさ。
Malos' fate was sealed from the moment he was awakened from his core crystal. Awakened is the blade of an upstart Indolese politician, a Malthus. Malos' entire worldview was shaped by this man's nihilism and disdain for the state of humanity. Malos is the Endbringer. He believes his only role in the world is to destroy, and that is why the Architect put him into the world. This extends as far as hating all of humanity and believing they serve no purpose in the world, just as a Malthus does. There's a certain twisted irony in this. As while a Malthus believes all humanity does is fight and destroy itself, he seeks to accelerate that same destruction to his own ends. This means Malos was ultimately fated to come into conflict with anyone who has hope for humanity. In Xenoblade 2, a major theme in the plot is the idea of having an answer to the meaning of one's own life. Malos' answer has been given to him all along. Unlike Mithra, he believes he'll never grow past it either, as a Malthus is unflinching in his point of view. He's here to play a role, not put his own meaning into the world. However, his core crystal never stops accumulating data. While his purpose and answer cannot change, this doesn't mean that the context of that purpose is unyielding. Malos imbued his otherwise meaningless life with meaning, forging relationships which ultimately helped him grow and change into a different person. While he was never unable to entirely overcome Malthus' influence, Malos found his own reasons for hating the world and seeking to destroy humanity. When we first see Malos in Torna, he was only just recently awoken by a Malthus. As a result, Malos' understanding of the world around him is unpolished, with his only goal being to destroy whatever is in front of him. It's a shallow understanding, but one that fits a Malthus' purposes. He demonstrates the subconscious influence that a Malthus has had on him, as he understands that all humanity does is fight amongst themselves, ever coming closer to their own destruction. He simply needs to give them a push in the right direction. Ultimately, Malos succeeds in destroying the Tornan Titan, but not by his own hands. Adam's inability to wield Mithra's power drives her to desperation, and she begins lashing out, ultimately going berserk and sinking Torna. In the aftermath of this, Indal, now under the command of a Malthus, launches massive military campaigns with the intent of hunting down Mithra and Malos. Both of them were already long gone though, and this would only result in the death of innocent people, such as Laura, which led to Jin becoming a flesh eater. However, it was this that ultimately led to the biggest change in Malos, whose core was damaged in the battle. Sometime after the events of Torna, Malos meets a man wearing a cloak in the streets of Mor Ardain. This turns out to be Jin, who Malos is shocked to see without his driver. Malos tells him that he's just like him and reaches a hand out, making his first meaningful bond. Malos and Jin then proceed to form Torna, an organization set on defeating Indal and ultimately destroying all rest. This particular interaction is where we first get to see how Malos has changed. In the aftermath of Torna, Malos lost access to his powers as an Aegis, which was likely a deeply humbling experience for him. Additionally, meeting Jin again showed him just how horrible the world actually was. The last time he saw Jin, they were enemies. Just what could have driven the Paragon of Torna to the depths of despair? For Malos, this reaffirms what he already thought about the world, but recontextualizes it. This is what the world does to someone who is otherwise a good man. It all needs to burn down. Over the course of what is likely a couple hundred years, they managed to recruit Mikhail, a blade eater who traveled alongside Jin in Torna, Akos, Petroka, and Nia. Everyone in Torna is either a blade eater or a flesh eater, creating their own team of misfits hell-bent on the downfall of Indal, and ultimately, the destruction of all rest. Interestingly, Malos allows Jin to take the lead of Torna, showing that he's actually learned to trust someone besides himself in the 500 years between the downfall of Torna and the beginning of Xenoblade 2. By the time we see Malos and Jin in the story again, it is clear that they have an extremely strong bond, and have established their own found family with the other members of Torna. Malos banters throughout Torna, but it's always adversarial. In Xenoblade 2, we get to see a more lighthearted side of his character, such as in Chapter 1 when Malos makes fun of Jin for bringing Rex alongside them to fight on the ancient ship. He also seems visibly bothered beyond just mere annoyance when Nia changes sides to help Rex and Pyra, showing that he actually does care about the bonds that he has with others. After this, we get to see his interactions with the other members of Torna more. He's outright friendly with them, acting as an older brother to Akos, Mikhail, and Petroka. He continuously shows concern for Jin as well, reminding him not to act so recklessly. We learn maybe the most critical part of Malos' relationship to Jin in Chapter 3. When Pyra is confused about Jin and Malos' relationship, Malos outright states that he exists for Jin's benefit. This is what really shows how Malos has changed since Torna, as while Amalthus doesn't value bonds whatsoever, Malos has learned from Jin and knows that he can derive strength from his friends. This is reinforced later in the chapter, when Akos describes the goal to destroy the world as Jin's rather than Malos's. We also see that Malos believes that his purpose is to destroy the world just as he does in Torna, but this time has a purpose behind doing it. He wants to get revenge for what the world did to Jin. The next time we really get to see Malos is in Chapter 6, when Jin returns to Torna's base. Malos reminds Jin that he needs to keep himself alive because Malos will make his dream come true. While it was clear that they were close before, this scene makes it evident just how devoted Malos is to Jin. In the same scene, Malos' own resolve wavers for the first time ever. Malos questions if his will is even his own or if it's someone else's. Malos is beginning to become acutely aware of the influence that Amalthus has had on him, likely in no small part due to the emotional intelligence he's gained through his relationship with others. Jin comments on how Malos is even starting to sound like a human, and the two question if blades and humans are even so different after all. A core tenet of Jin's worldview in Xenoblade 2 is his distaste for the relationship between humanity and their blades. He knows that humanity can bond with their blades in deep, meaningful ways like he and Laura did, but the vast majority use them as tools to wage war or accomplish a task. This makes Malos' question all the more interesting, as Jin knows the answer deep down. People and blades aren't so different. For Malos to even be open to questioning this shows how deeply Jin is implanted onto him. Later on, we see Malos' nature changing even more. When he steals the data from Pyra's core crystal to restore his own, he comments on needing to know why we're like this. While Malos at one point was content to just destroy and accept his fate, now he's beginning to question his nature itself. When he takes Pyra's memories, he also comments on them being garbage, but deep down, we know he doesn't actually feel this way. Malos also continues to outwardly deny the value of bonds when Rex comes to confront him, claiming that the Aegis is beneath forming bonds with a human, despite the fact that Mikhail is literally a human who he acts as an older brother towards. Following this confrontation, Rex finally gets a chance to know Jin, and hears his story. Jin begins to see Laura and Rex, and this is where we see Jin's resolve begin to waver. When they escape Moritha, Jin even explicitly tells Petroka not to attack Rex and his group. Whether Jin wants to admit it or not, he has begun to place his hope in Rex. In chapters 8 through 10, the ending of the game, we get to see a lot of Malos at his most sentimental. He actively feels remorse for destroying Judicium during the Aegis War and indirectly harming Jin's chances of actually receiving adequate medical care, as his condition is degrading fast. In this scene, Malos even double checks with Jin that he's still sure this is the path he wants to take, which Jin reaffirms him of. As Malos climbs the world tree, he and Jin part ways, knowing that this is the final time they'll see each other. Jin tells Malos he's going to wait for Rex, and Malos gives Jin a hug. Uncharacteristic for a guy who claims bonds are beneath the Aegis. He also whispers something in Jin's ear. There's a couple of different interpretations for what exactly Malos said to Jin here. In the ending of the game, there's another unvoiced line with subtitles spoken by Pyra and Mithra when they return to Rex. This scene was likely meant to parallel what Malos said to Jin. In the game data for the Japanese version of Xenoblade 2, the line spoken by Pyra and Mithra is, "I'm home." The lip flaps also pretty closely match this. This line makes a lot of sense here too, as Malos is literally returning to his place of origin and doing what he and Jin have been dreaming of for the last 500 years. In some sense, Malos and Jin went on the same journey that Rex and Pyra did, seeking to confirm that destroying the world is the meaning of their lives. For Malos, this is home and he's here to stay permanently. However, this is not the only interpretation of what was said in this scene. In the fanbase, a fairly popular interpretation is that "I love you" is what was actually said. Once again, this would match the lip flaps for Pyra and Mithra at the end of the game fairly well. Malos and Jin have been partners for the last 500 years at this point. They are the only people in the world who fully understand each other, and their journey has finally delivered them to their end goal. Feeling love for one another after all they've been through together is only logical. While this is happening, Rex finally pieces together the truth. He says that talking to Amalthus is a lot like talking to Malos, and that he believes that they ultimately want the same thing, but for completely different reasons. Rex beginning to understand Malos is important and will come up again later when they finally confront each other. Malos eventually makes his way to the Architect. He questions the meaning of the name Logos, which Klaus remarks on as being meaningless. This is pretty clearly not true, which we'll get to later. Malos asks his father if the choice to destroy the world is truly his own, which the Architect says was a choice that they made together. The meaning of together in this particular scene is unclear and opens up a few different interpretations. The first and most obvious is that it was a choice made alongside a Malthus, as it is ultimately what a Malthus also hopes to accomplish. The second, and significantly more interesting one, is that it's a choice Malos made alongside all the people he met and grew with. Jin, Mikhail, Petroka, Akos, even Nia. All of them had been deeply hurt by the world in some way, and Malos tried to help them in the only way he knew was possible. By destroying the world, Malos hopes to spare the ones he cares for from further pain. Rex also makes his way to the top of the world tree, and confronts Malos to decide the fate of all rest. Malos tells Rex that he's saved him the best seats of the house for their final confrontation, and comments on how he even sounds like Akos, further evidence for how his bonds have imprinted onto him. By this point, Jin has fallen, helping Rex defeat a Malthus, and every other member of Torna fell fighting Indal or were killed by a Malthus. Malos knew this was going to happen, but the impact we see on him as a result of this is shocking. He tells Rex how all he can do is send his friends off with a smile. If you've played Xenoblade 3, you know how relevant this line is and how shocking it is to hear something like this from Malos. Rex also tells Malos that he knows his nature comes from Malthus, which Malos more or less says so what to. He explains to Rex that seeing the state Jin was in was his real reason for wanting to destroy the world. He can't understand the indifferent cruelty of the world towards Jin. Malos also says that he is a hideous monster beyond saving and that this is merely his fate. Numa questions why Malos can't understand their father's feeling, and he says this simply isn't his role. While Klaus claims that the names of the Trinity Core processor are irrelevant, this clearly is not entirely true, as Malos' words are truthful. He has the Logos Core. His goal isn't to understand the feelings of others, but to simply understand the objective logic of the situation before him. This contrasts Numa, who is meant to represent the vital spirit of humanity, and understand emotions as well as the soul. Malos could never understand the complex feelings of someone above life and death like Klaus, and could only see that the people he cared about were hurting, and decided that he needed to put an end to that hurt permanently. Malos has chosen his path. He knows he is beyond the point of no return, and tells Rex to show him why he's here in the world. For Malos, this is only logical. If he wins, he can destroy the world and accomplish his goal, and if Rex wins, he proves that the bonds of humanity transcend his own nihilism. During their battle, Rex comments on how Malos used to understand that they had to find a way forward in the world they live with, acknowledging that Malos himself is not fundamentally evil. Rex knows that he's acting upon his logical solution to help his friends, guided by the subconscious influence of a Malthus. In a massive burst of light, Rex and Numa deliver one last attack, ejecting Malos from Artifice Ion. In his final moments, Malos comments on how if he had met Rex sooner, things might have been different, finally delivering an outright acknowledgement of the role that others played in his growth as a person. He comments on how all in all, his life wasn't so bad, and returns to his broken core crystal, which goes dim with one last flicker. We don't actually see this on screen, but it's confirmed per Xenoblade 3 that this happened. Malos found meaning in his life through the people that surrounded him and ultimately helped him come so close to his goal. He found meaning in his relationship with Torna and in being challenged by Rex. Ultimately, his meaningless life was imbued with meaning, showing the power of his relationships with others. In the final moments of the game, we see Malos, likely in a more pure form, ask Numa how it was to live. We can actually interpret this scene to be the Numa and Logos cores communicating directly, as this is likely the point where Numa also returned to her core. She shares the meaning of her life with him, both content with the experiences they've had, and the world tree falls, leaving the two cores in some unknown location, ending the story of Xenoblade 2. I hope you enjoyed this analysis of Malos' character and learned something you didn't know about him. Since he's likely to have a big role in the next game, I don't think we've seen the last of him, and I'm excited to see where his character might go next. As always, let me know if there's anything you think I missed. Thanks for watching.